Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations. That's your service. To describe for you the anatomy of a repeater. You probably already know what a repeater is if you're a radio ham, because repeaters are probably the most common single mode. Repeater usage is probably the commonly most single mode used by ham radio operators. Make of that what you will. An old fuddy-duddy W1GV here. That's what you make of it. But a repeater basically takes a signal from one station, converts it to another frequency, usually within the same band, but not always, and then retransmits it so that two stations who wouldn't otherwise be able to hear one another can hear each other by means of this repeater. Usually a repeater is located in a high place, so it can, quote, see, unquote, a long way. It has a long radio horizon. It has a powerful transmitter, much more powerful than most mobile portable or portable stations. Fixed stations may have high power, but if there's a mountain in the way, they won't be able to hear each other unless there's a repeater on top of it. And that's what repeaters are for. And unfortunately, repeaters have become so prolific, so numerous, that people have begun to initiate restrictions on their use, which may kind of defeat their purpose, which is to facilitate emergency communications. The basic anatomy of a repeater comprises a single antenna for transmitting and receiving in almost every case, an omnidirectional high gain antenna. Several vertical dipoles in phase will do that, and that's a very common, it even looks something like this, a very common type of antenna. The duplexer separates the receiver and the transmitter frequencies, keeps them from interacting and interfering with one another. The antenna picks up the signal from one station, feeds it into a receiver where it is demodulated and into an ordinary signal, which then modulates a transmitter on a different frequency within the same band, usually offset by a predetermined amount. 600 kilohertz plus or minus is quite common in the 2-meter ham radio band. Repeaters are common on 2 meters, 144 megahertz band, usually between 145 and 147 megahertz. They're common on the 220 megahertz band, but not as common. And quite common now also on the 432 megahertz band. Also, that's technically in the UHF or ultra high frequency range. The 144 and 220 megahertz bands are technically in the VHF or very high frequency range. You'll occasionally find repeaters, I believe, on the 28 megahertz or 10 meter ham radio band. I don't know if they're legal there anymore, but you will occasionally, I think you used to at least occasionally find them. I just haven't done very much repeater operation. I'm an old timer CW type guy, and I don't get into repeater operation very often. Even when I took my trip to Wyoming a couple of years ago, which you can see in the playlist on my channel, Wandering the West is the title of the playlist, where I did mobile and portable CW operation. I don't think I made a single contact on one of these repeater things, but they are very useful in emergency communications, provided you are privy to the access code, which is really a topic for an entirely new video. Your signal has to contain certain codes for most repeaters to respond to them. Repeaters have been abused so much that has become necessary. I'm sorry to say. But they serve a useful purpose in ham radio applications, most notably, as I said before, in emergencies. They're invaluable in emergencies, in particular in a location like the black holes of Dakota Territory, where I reside. Up on top of some of the higher peaks in the black holes, you'll find these things, repeaters, with long, distant radio horizons that can cover, in some cases, radii of over 100 miles, allowing stations more than 200 miles apart in some instances to communicate with one another, when ordinarily that would simply not be possible on the very high frequency band. So repeaters in ham radio applications, as contrasted with transponders, which, rather than reproducing signals at one frequency and converting them to another frequency, reproduce signals over an entire band of frequencies and convert them to signals at a different band of frequencies. A repeater can handle generally one signal at a time, one conversation or exchange at a time, whereas a transponder can handle hundreds, up to hundreds in many cases, of conversations or contacts at a time. So that I just had to do this video to go along with the one entitled Transponder, which I recommend that you also watch, so that you will become an enlightened old-timer like this old fuddy-duddy W1GV, who will now sign off, saying 73, which means best regards, and so long, which means, in my native fist of CW, did-did-da-da-da-da.